What if everything you've built, your identity, your relationships, your dreams, was rooted in something you were never told? Something hidden, something dark, something that was never yours to carry. And yet, you've carried it your whole life. They say the truth sets you free, but what if the truth was buried before you were even born? Deep beneath the surface of ordinary life lies a secret, not the kind you hear in whispers or find in old letters, but the kind that lives in silence, in patterns, in inherited shame, a psychic wound passed down like a cursed heirloom, generation after generation, and the most haunting part? You don't even know it's there. But your life does. Your decisions, your addictions, your broken relationships, your repeated failures, your emptiness. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the part of the psyche that holds everything we refuse to face. But what happens when the shadow isn't just yours, but your family's? What happens when the very blood in your veins carries unspoken truths and buried traumas? This is not just psychology. This is soul work. In this video, you'll uncover the one dark secret that's quietly destroying your life. You'll learn how hidden emotional legacies, unconscious family patterns, betrayals, traumas become the invisible architects of your suffering. You'll see how the shadow operates like a silent puppeteer, pulling your strings from behind the curtain, until one day you look in the mirror and ask, whose life am I really living? This journey is not comfortable, it's not easy, but it's necessary, because what is not brought to consciousness returns as fate. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. So ask yourself now, as you press play and commit to this path, what is the secret my family never told me? Stay until the end, because the answer might be the key to reclaiming your life. What is a psychic secret? A psychic secret is not simply a memory you've forgotten. It's not a family story tucked away in an attic or lost in old journals. No, this kind of secret lives in your nervous system, in your dreams, in your fears, in the choices you keep making without knowing why. A psychic secret is an unspoken truth that buries itself in the unconscious. It slips through generations, not through words, but through energy, through silence, through shame. Jung understood this well. He knew that the unconscious is not just personal, it's collective, meaning the traumas and experiences of your ancestors don't die with them. They live inside you, like hidden code, shaping your inner world from behind the veil. Think about this. Have you ever felt something was off in your family, but no one ever talked about it? A quiet tension at the dinner table, a name that was never mentioned, a story that was always cut short. That silence is not empty, it is full of meaning. A psychic secret often begins with trauma, a betrayal, an affair, a death, an exile. Something happened that could not be spoken, so it was buried. But the psyche never forgets. And what the psyche hides, it expresses in other ways. The child of a mother who lost a child may carry the grief of that loss without ever knowing why he feels heavy his whole life. The granddaughter of a man who was betrayed may grow up unable to trust anyone, without knowing she's reliving his wound. These aren't just coincidences, these are psychic inheritances, unconscious patterns disguised as personality traits. Emotional weight that was never yours to carry, yet has shaped every part of who you think you are. And this is why the first step is not to blame, but to become aware. Because once you recognize the secret doesn't belong to you, you begin to see that you have a choice, to carry it forward, or to finally lay it down. The family shadow, what your bloodline hid from you. Every family has a shadow, not just individuals, but entire bloodlines carry what Jung called the unlived life of the ancestors. These shadows are made of secrets, shame, guilt, and pain that no one dared to name. And when they're not named, they don't disappear, they wait. They wait in your DNA, in your family myths, in the way your father would go silent when certain topics came up, in the way your mother cried at night and said it was nothing. The family shadow is not always visible. It's felt. It hides in the rituals of silence, in emotional coldness, in addictions that pass from one generation to the next like sacred objects. Jung believed that the parts of the self we reject or ignore become the shadow. But in families, these rejections compound. Imagine generation after generation refusing to face a particular truth. That energy builds, it thickens, until someone in the lineage becomes the one who feels it all and doesn't know why. That someone is often you. If you're watching this, it's likely because you were born with a sensitivity, a psychic radar. You sense what others avoid. You feel the tension in the room even when everyone is smiling. You notice the gaps in stories, the tears behind the jokes. You are the carrier, but also the potential healer. The family shadow is sustained by silence. But the moment someone dares to speak, to feel, to question, that silence breaks. Maybe your grandfather disappeared one day and was never spoken of again. Maybe your mother never talked about her childhood. Maybe your family pretends everything is fine, but nothing is. These are signs that something is buried beneath the surface, something that didn't end with them, something that lives in you now as anxiety, self-doubt, depression, chronic guilt, or a constant feeling that something is missing. Jung wrote, "Nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their environment, and especially on their children, than the unlived life of the parent." That unlived life is the family shadow, and it will haunt the lineage until someone is brave enough to look at it directly. The question is, will that someone be you? Symptoms of an unspoken secret. The unconscious doesn't use words. It speaks in patterns, in symbols, in symptoms. When a psychic secret is buried, it doesn't disappear, it leaks. And the leak shows up in your life in ways you can't explain. You keep choosing partners who abandon you. You sabotage your success the moment you get close to it. You feel a constant heaviness, a sadness that doesn't belong to any one event. These are not random. They are signals. The psyche, like the body, wants to heal. But to heal, it first needs to be heard. One of the most common symptoms of a buried secret is repetition. You may not know why you keep ending up in the same painful situations, relationships, jobs, conflicts. But deep down, the soul is trying to bring the unseen into the light through lived experience. As Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." These fated experiences are often not fate at all. They're reenactments of a forgotten story. Another symptom is emotional numbness. You go through life like a ghost, disconnected, unmotivated, always searching for meaning but never finding it. That emptiness isn't laziness or failure. It may be the residue of an emotional truth that was never spoken aloud. Dreams can also carry the fingerprint of the secret. Recurring nightmares, symbols of death, drowning, locked rooms, or hidden children. The unconscious uses dream language to hint at what the waking self cannot yet see. And then there's chronic guilt, the kind that lingers without reason. You apologize for existing. You feel responsible for everyone's pain. This guilt may not be yours at all. It may belong to an ancestor who was exiled, betrayed, or silenced, and now lives through your emotional body. Symptoms are not problems to be fixed, they are messages. And if you ignore them long enough, they get louder, more chaotic, more painful. The key is not to suppress these symptoms, but to listen to them, to ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Whose story am I reliving? Because sometimes what you call bad luck is just a secret trying to be seen. The body speaks when the secret becomes illness. The body is the final truth teller. When the soul is silenced, the body screams. You may call it fatigue, anxiety, migraines, chronic pain. But sometimes these aren't medical mysteries, they are emotional messages. Because long before you get a diagnosis, your body has been whispering, something is wrong. Carl Jung believed that psychological repression leads to somatic symptoms. When we refuse to feel what needs to be felt, the energy doesn't vanish. It lodges itself in the body. That secret, the one no one talked about, the one your mother carried in silence, the one your grandfather buried with him, it may now live in you as tightness in the chest. A stomach that clenches for no reason, a throat that closes every time you want to speak the truth. These are not random symptoms, they are the echo of the unsaid. There are stories of people carrying inexplicable illnesses, only to feel sudden relief after discovering a family truth. A hidden affair, a child given away, a suicide no one mentioned. And once the story comes to light, the symptom disappears. This is not magic, it is the body's way of completing a cycle that was never allowed to end. Jung taught that illness often has a symbolic meaning. A back pain could symbolize feeling unsupported. Chronic fatigue might reflect the weight of carrying emotions that were never yours. Skin disorders might represent a boundary violation. Something got under your skin long ago. The mind and body are not separate. They are deeply intertwined, dancing to the same inner rhythm. So the next time your body aches, ask yourself, what emotion have I swallowed for too long? What truth have I avoided that now lives inside my cells? The body will carry what the psyche cannot, but it can only hold so much, until one day it forces you to listen, not to punish you, but to free you, the collective unconscious and the myths you're living. You think you're living your own life, making your own choices, becoming who you want to be. But what if you're not? What if you're playing out a script that was written long before you were born? Jung called it the collective unconscious, a vast psychic field shared by all humanity, filled with ancient symbols, images, and patterns of behavior, myths, archetypes, primal instincts. And whether you realize it or not, these forces are shaping your life. Right now, have you ever noticed how certain stories repeat, generation after generation? Fathers who disappear, mothers who suffer in silence, siblings who betray, children who carry the burdens of their parents. These are not just personal tragedies. These are mythic patterns, archetypal stories that live in the collective psyche, waiting to be reenacted. Jung believed we don't just read myths, we live them. You may be living the myth of the wounded healer, endlessly giving to others but unable to heal yourself, or the exiled child, always feeling like you don't belong no matter where you are. These myths have power because they are unconscious. They operate in the background, like ancient software, directing your behavior through emotion, attraction, and instinct. And when combined with your family shadow, they form a potent psychic cocktail, a story within a story, a personal wound embedded in a collective drama. This is why it's not enough to understand your childhood or your trauma. You must also understand the myth you are unconsciously playing out, because the myth provides the context. It tells you what kind of story you're in. And only when you see the story can you begin to rewrite it. Jung warned that those who live without understanding their myth fall into depression, confusion, and emptiness, because they are disconnected from the deeper symbolic meaning of their own existence. So ask yourself now, what archetype is living through me? What myth am I trapped inside? The moment you ask this, the spell begins to break, because awareness is the first step toward liberation. You are not doomed to repeat the past, but you must first recognize the ancient pattern that has held you in place. Only then can you choose a different ending. The boomerang effect, why the secret always returns. Secrets don't stay buried, they orbit, quietly, patiently, until the moment is right, and they return. You may think you've escaped the past, you've moved on, you've built a life. You don't ask questions. You don't dig, but the secret doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It waits, and then it finds its way back through your children, your relationships, your failures, your dreams. This is what Jung called the boomerang effect of the unconscious. What is not made conscious will always come back, and often it comes back harder. That affair your grandmother took to her grave, you might relive it in your own marriage, wondering why you're drawn to betrayal. That grief your father never expressed, you might carry it in your chest, mistaking it for anxiety. That violence, that shame, that silence, it doesn't disappear, it recycles, not to punish you, but to be seen, to be healed. The psyche is deeply intelligent. It keeps returning us to the same emotional landscape until we finally feel what was never felt, speak what was never spoken, grieve what was never grieved. So the repetition in your life isn't random. It's sacred. It's the unconscious trying to complete a sentence your ancestors never finished. Jung believed this return was an invitation to individuation, to become whole by confronting the repressed. The boomerang doesn't just bring back pain, it brings back opportunity to break a cycle, to interrupt the pattern, to become the first in your lineage to say, this ends with me. But here's the truth. If you refuse that invitation, the shadow will find another way. It will enter your children. It will enter your body. It will enter your dreams. That's the cost of silence. That's the cost of not looking back. So ask yourself, what has come back into my life over and over again? What am I being asked to face once and for all? Because the secret doesn't return to haunt you, it returns to free you. The crisis point, when life forces you to see the truth. Every secret eventually demands to be seen, and when you resist, life has a way of tearing down the walls you've built to protect yourself. This tearing down is what we call a crisis. The failed marriage, the lost job, the sudden illness, the depression that won't let you get out of bed, the moment when the life you carefully constructed collapses in front of you. Most people fear crisis. They see it as punishment, bad luck, or divine betrayal. But Jung saw it differently. He saw crisis as a threshold, a point where the unconscious finally breaks through the surface, a demand for transformation. Think of it like an earthquake. The ground beneath you cracks open, and what was buried deep below suddenly erupts into daylight. Painful? Yes, but necessary, because without the quake, you would never see what lies beneath. Many who awaken to family secrets do so at this breaking point. They discover the affair, the betrayal, the hidden child, or they simply realize, I've been living someone else's story my whole life. Crisis is the psyche's way of saying, you cannot go on like this. It is the shadow's final knock at your door, and if you refuse to open, it will break the door down. Jung often warned that the greatest danger is not the crisis itself, but the refusal to listen to its message, to numb yourself, to run back into denial, because denial only guarantees one thing, another bigger crisis. So when your world falls apart, ask yourself, what truth is trying to break through me? What is life demanding I finally face? Crisis doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to destroy the false self you've been carrying. The secret that has haunted your bloodline is no longer content to stay in the dark, and the collapse you fear may be the very doorway to your freedom. Because in Jung's words, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. The dream messenger, when the unconscious speaks at night, when the waking mind refuses to see, the unconscious turns to the language of the night. Dreams, they are not random. They are not meaningless fragments of memory. They are messages, carefully crafted symbols, designed to bypass your rational defenses and deliver truth straight to the soul. Jung devoted much of his life to studying dreams, calling them the royal road to the unconscious. He believed that what we refuse to face in daylight returns to us in the dark, wearing symbolic disguises. Have you ever had a dream so vivid that it stayed with you for days? A dream of drowning, of being chased, of a house with locked rooms, of a child you couldn't save. These are not accidents, they are mirrors. They reflect the secret you have not yet dared to name. In families with hidden traumas, dreams often reveal what was silenced. The dream might show a faceless figure, a missing relative, a forbidden love, and though you may wake in confusion, your soul knows exactly what it's pointing toward. Jung wrote, "Dreams are the guiding words of the soul. They are not there to frighten you, but to guide you, to give you the missing pieces of the story you inherited. The key is not to interpret them literally, but symbolically. A dream of drowning may not mean death. It may mean you're suffocating under emotions you inherited but never processed. A locked room may symbolize a secret memory sealed away in your family history. A shadowy figure may represent the part of yourself you were forbidden to express. And often, dreams come in repetition. Like a messenger knocking at your door night after night, insisting, "Listen to me. There is something you must see." The dream world is where the unconscious becomes the teacher, where the secret begins to speak. So the next time you wake in a sweat, or remember a dream that shakes you, don't dismiss it, write it down, sit with it. Ask, what truth is this dream pointing me toward? What story is struggling to break the silence? Because sometimes the dream knows the secret before you do. The individuation process, walking through pain to become whole. To live with a secret is to live divided. Part of you walks in the light, smiling, working, pretending, but another part remains in the dark, carrying grief, rage, and fear that were never yours alone. Jung called the path out of this division the process of individuation. It is the journey of becoming whole, of reconciling the parts of yourself you were taught to deny, ignore, or bury. Individuation is not self-improvement. It's not about becoming better, happier, or more successful. It's about becoming true, becoming who you are beneath the masks, beyond the inherited roles. But here is the truth. Individuation requires confrontation. You cannot reach wholeness without walking through pain. To individuate is to turn toward the shadow, your own and your family's. To name the secret, to feel the grief, to sit in the fire of what has been hidden. And this is why most avoid it, because it hurts, because it shatters illusions, because it demands the death of the false self. Yet Jung insisted, there is no light without shadow and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. Individuation is not about erasing your scars. It's about weaving them into your story so they no longer control you. Imagine carrying the pain of generations and finally setting it down. Imagine facing the truth your ancestors could not face and walking away free. That is individuation. It's not a single moment, but a lifelong process. Each time you confront a fear, each time you speak what was forbidden, each time you choose truth over silence, you take another step toward wholeness. And here lies the paradox. The very pain you fear is also the doorway to your liberation. The wound, Jung said, is the place where the soul enters. So ask yourself, what have I been running from? What part of myself have I banished to the shadows? Because the journey of individuation doesn't begin when you feel ready. It begins the moment you decide to stop running. And on the other side of that confrontation is the freedom to finally live as your true self. The legacy, breaking the cycle and changing the bloodline. Every secret carries a cost, but every revelation carries a gift. When you choose to confront the shadow, you are not just healing yourself, you're rewriting the story of your entire bloodline. Think about this. Generations before you may have lived and died under the weight of silence. They endured the pain of betrayal, abandonment, exile, or shame without ever speaking it aloud. They carried the burden so heavily that they passed it down to you, hoping, perhaps unconsciously, that you would be the one strong enough to face it. You are that one. Jung believed that the task of individuation is never purely personal. Each person who becomes conscious contributes to the healing of the collective, which means when you face the secret, you break the cycle, not only for yourself, but for those who came before and those who will come after. Imagine your children living free from patterns of abandonment, guilt, or fear. Imagine future generations no longer bound by the silence that haunted your family for decades, perhaps centuries. This is not fantasy. This is the power of one person's courage to confront the truth. Breaking the cycle does not mean erasing the past. It means giving the past a voice. It means saying, "This happened. It was real. And now it ends with me." When you do this, you transform the shadow into wisdom, the secret into story, the wound into a source of strength. This is legacy. Not the legacy of money, status, or titles, but the legacy of liberation. Jung wrote, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents. But when you live fully, consciously, authentically, you lift that burden. You return life to the lineage. The ancestors who could not speak through their own voices now speak through yours. And in that act, something sacred happens. The curse becomes a blessing. The silence becomes song. You are the turning point, the one who said, 'No more.' And because of that choice, generations yet unborn will live in a different story. A story of freedom, a story of truth, a story of light. The one dark secret that has haunted your life may never be spoken aloud in your family. It may remain nameless, locked away, denied, but that doesn't matter, because you've already begun the most important step, to see. Awareness is the crack in the armor of silence, and once the crack appears, the light enters. Yes, the truth is heavy. Yes, it will break illusions. Yes, it will shatter the life you thought was yours, but it will also free you, because what is not brought to consciousness returns as fate. And what is faced with courage becomes destiny. You now know the signs, the body that speaks when the mouth cannot, the dreams that reveal what the daylight denies, the crises that shake the false self to the ground, the repetitions that call you back to the wound until you finally stop and listen. These are not punishments. They are invitations, invitations to step out of inherited shadows and into the light of your own truth. Jung taught that individuation, the path of becoming whole, is not about perfection. It is about honesty, about integrating the rejected, the silenced, the unlived, about embracing your story, even the chapters written in darkness. Because when you face the shadow, you do not just heal yourself. You heal your lineage. You break the cycle. You change the bloodline. Imagine generations after you living freer because you dared to look at what others denied. Imagine being remembered not as the one who carried the curse, but as the one who transformed it into blessing. That is your gift. That is your legacy. But the choice remains yours, to look away or to look within, to carry the silence or to break it. And so, as this journey ends, a single question remains. Will you let the shadow continue its work unseen, or will you face it and finally reclaim your life? The answer is not in theory. It is not in these words. It is in your next breath, your next choice, your next act of courage. Because the truth does not wait forever, the shadow does not sleep, and your soul will never stop calling you home.